They say when you're dying, your life flashes before your eyes. That's not true. When you're dying slowly, not from bullets or bombs, but from something quieter, like being forgotten, life doesn't flash. It fades. One quiet second at a time. I was sitting in the emergency room of St. Mary's Hospital. The air smelled like bleach and plastic gloves, and the clock ticked louder than the conversations around me. My hands were shaking. Not from the chest pain that brought me there, that had subsided hours ago. No. I was shaking from something else. Abandonment, maybe. Jason had dropped me off at 3:45 p.m. Just until the doctor sees you, Dad. I have a call with a client, but I'll be right back. Promise. That was 7 hours ago. 7 hours of staring at chipped linoleum tiles, listening to names called that weren't mine. Watching strangers leave with family while I sat alone, gripping the armrest of a wheelchair too tight, like it might roll me back into a time when I mattered. I used to matter. Sergeant Frank Miller. 2 tours in Vietnam. Bronze Star. Later, Mr. Miller, the teacher students lined up to thank after graduation. The man parents trusted with their kids' minds. I gave lectures that made high schoolers cry over Gettysburg and cheer at the Declaration of Independence. I had a reputation. Now, I'm the old man with stained sleeves who asks the nurse every half hour if his son is back. She's kind, that nurse. Her name tag says Maria. She squats beside me sometimes, touches my wrist lightly. I'm sure he's just stuck in traffic, she says, her voice too soft, like she doesn't believe her own words. I nod. Always nod. Because it's easier than admitting the truth out loud, he's not coming back. The pain in my chest is dull now, more emotional than physical. The kind of ache that doesn't show up on scans. I look around the waiting room. A teenage boy scrolling through his phone. A woman asleep under a coat. A janitor mopping near the vending machines. None of them see me. Not really. I've become invisible. A fixture. Like the outdated magazines stacked beside me. Back when Sarah was little, she used to crawl into my lap during storms and whisper, "Daddy, don't leave me." Funny how roles reverse. I want to stand up, to walk out, but I don't trust my legs. They're like my kids now, unreliable when I need them most. The hospital TV plays muted news. Another shooting. Another hurricane. The world's falling apart and I'm not even part of the audience anymore. Then something in me stirs. A memory. It's raining. Not outside. In my head. Saigon, 1969. Monsoon season. My squad under a tarp, soaked and shivering. One of the young privates, scared out of his mind, asked me, "Sarge, are we gonna make it?" And I said, "We always do. Because we don't leave anyone behind." I believed it. I lived it. But somewhere between the rice field of Vietnam and the kitchen table back in Ohio, my children forgot that lesson. Now I'm the one left behind. The nurse returns. "Mr. Miller, would you like me to call someone for you?" I open my mouth. Close it. Who would I call? My daughter Sarah. She hasn't visited in 4 months. Sends flowers on birthdays, but never her voice. My granddaughter. She's in college. Doesn't know what war smells like or what it's like to bury your wife after 42 years of marriage. "Mr. Miller," the nurse prompts again, gentle. I look up at her and smile. "No, thank you," I say. "I'll wait." And I do. But not for them. For something else. Something deeper, colder, forming in the quiet parts of me. Not anger. Not yet. But the beginning of something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. They wheeled me into room 214 at 1:17 a.m. I remember because the nurse whispered the time into her radio like it mattered. To them, I was a fire. A wristband. A patient. To me, I was still a man who'd once held the hand of a dying comrade in a jungle 8,000 miles away. Now I was holding nothing but a thin hospital blanket. Do you have anyone we should call? Another nurse asked while adjusting the four. I paused. That question used to have so many answers. My son. Jason, I muttered. He said he'd be back. She nodded kindly, not unkindly, but with that expression people give when they've heard the same excuse 100 times. He probably got caught up with something, she offered. Yeah. Caught up. In life. In forgetting. The room was quiet, except for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and the occasional cough from the hallway. The air conditioner hissed like it had secrets. I stared at the ceiling. Stereo white. No stars. No sky. Just a dull square tile pattern that reminded me of the school cafeteria I used to eat lunch in for 28 years. Every day, I sat alone with my tray while students buzzed around me. I liked it that way. I had earned my solitude. I had given them knowledge, stories, not just from books, but from blood and experience. I'd given all of me. Now I was just left. The doctor came in around 2:40 a.m. Young. No older than my grandson. Clean-shaven, eyes glued to the chart. Didn't even say my name right. Mr. Miller, mild atrial fibrillation. Nothing critical, but we'll monitor you overnight. Any chest pressure now? I shook my head. He scribbled something. Then said, "You're lucky. Stress-related most likely. Happens at your age. At your age." Those 3 words carried more weight than a battlefield backpack. I used to run 5 miles with a full pack, I said without knowing why. He smiled politely. Good for you? Good for me. I almost laughed. Almost. After he left, I turned toward the window. It was dark, but I could see the glow of streetlights. A nurse walked by. Another gurney rode past. Somewhere, a machine beeped too fast. Life continued, indifferent and unaware that a man like me once led platoons through hell and back, and now couldn't get a call returned by his children. I closed my eyes and saw my wife's face. Maggie. God, she'd know what to say right now. She always knew. Even when she was dying, she made me feel like I wasn't. I whispered into the dark, "I miss you." I imagined her saying, "I know, Frankie. But you're stronger than this." But am I? What strength is left in a man no one calls back? What weight does honor carry in a world that trades respect for relevance? Around 4 a.m., I tried to sit up. The nurse rushed in and told me to relax, that I'd set off the monitor. I told her I just needed to feel like I was still in control of something. Even if it was just my spine. She touched my shoulder. "You're not alone," she said. But she was wrong. You can be surrounded by people and still be completely invisible. That night, I made a promise to myself. I didn't know what it meant yet, but it was real. No more asking. No more waiting. No more pretending that time would fix what neglect had broken. My children had walked away from the man who gave them everything. And someday, when the silence finally echoed loud enough for them to hear, I'd be gone. But not broken. Never broken. When they finally discharged me at noon, the sun was too bright, almost rude. I stepped outside the hospital doors with a plastic bag of prescriptions and a discharge summary that said more about my pulse than about my life. The air smelled like asphalt and burnt coffee. People hurried past me, nurses changing shifts, visitors carrying balloons, a man yelling into his phone. No one looked at me twice. Taxi drivers waited in a row. I approached the nearest one. He didn't speak as I got in, just nodded and started the meter. I stared out the window, watching the world pass by like a film I no longer had a role in. When we pulled up to my house, a small single-story place with peeling blue paint, I felt an ache deeper than anything the doctors had checked for. Inside, the silence greeted me first. Not the warm kind that used to wrap around Maggie and me as we read by the fireplace. No. This was a colder silence. The silence of a place unlived in, where dust becomes the only reliable visitor. The kitchen still had that faint smell of old tea and lemon cleaner. I set the hospital papers on the counter and shuffled to the dining room, or what was once the dining room. Now it was more of a museum of what life used to be. There it stood, the oak table I built in 1981, 2 months before Sarah was born. I could still picture my younger hands sanding the edges, thinking about all the dinners we'd have here. Christmas turkey, birthday cakes, late-night homework sessions, board games scattered across its surface. 6 chairs. 6. I ran my fingers over the wood. It was smooth, familiar, like touching an old friend who no longer knew my name. I sat down slowly, letting the chair creak under my weight. My tea mug, chipped at the rim, still sat there from before the hospital. Maggie used to tease me for refusing to throw it away. "It's ugly, Frank," she'd laugh. "Let it go." But I never did. It was hers. That made it enough. Now, though, it looked lonely, abandoned on a table built for gatherings that no longer happened. I thought of Jason. Thought of him as a boy, running around the backyard with a stick pretending it was a rifle. "Dad. Dad. Did you see that?" He'd shout each time he swung it. I always said yes. I always watched. Funny thing, you don't realize when the watching becomes one-sided. When the child stops looking back. Then Sarah. My little shadow. She used to follow me everywhere, dragging her stuffed lamb by the ear. I taught her to ride a bike in the cracked driveway. I held her hand the entire first week of kindergarten drop-offs because she cried each time I let go. But she let go first, long before she realized. I took a breath and whispered into the empty room, "When did you stop needing me?" The house didn't answer. But something inside me did. Not words, a feeling. A slow, growing burn behind the ribs. Not anger. Not exactly. But awakening. The kind of awakening people talk about when they say a person has reached their limit. I stood and walked to the mantel where our old family picture stood. Jason in his college hoodie. Sarah with braces and too much eyeliner. Maggie smiling like she knew more than the rest of us. I picked up the frame and stared at it long and long. "We used to be a family," I whispered. "Now you leave me in hospitals and forget to come back." My voice cracked, but I didn't wipe the tear. Let it fall. Let the house witness it. Then I set the picture down, face down. Not out of spite. But because I realized something. I had been waiting for them longer than they had ever waited for me. And waiting is a kind of slow death. I sat back at the table, inhaled deeply, and felt something shift inside me. The first real shift since Maggie died. A quiet decision forming. Not dramatic. Not violent. But firm. If they had chosen distance, I would choose dignity. If they had chosen forgetfulness, I would choose clarity. And if they had chosen to leave me behind, then maybe it was time I stopped standing in the doorway, hoping they'd turn around. The mug, the chairs, the table, they weren't reminders of love anymore. They were reminders of a love I was the only one still holding. I closed my eyes and whispered. No more. Not a threat. A promise. It was a Thursday when Jason showed up. I heard his car before I saw it, the low, impatient growl of a foreign engine that didn't belong in my old, quiet neighborhood. A second later, 3 sharp knocks on the door. Then his voice, forced casual. "Hey, Dad. It's me." I didn't rush to open it. When I finally did, he was standing there in slacks and a grey quarter-zip sweater, holding a plastic grocery bag like it was a peace offering. He looked uncomfortable, like a man caught in the act of remembering something he'd been trying to forget. "Thought I'd bring you a few things. Milk. Soup. Stuff like that." I stepped aside without a word. He walked in, looked around the house like he'd forgotten what it looked like, or maybe like he was surprised it still stood. He placed the bag on the counter and started unloading, narrating like that would make the silence less unbearable. "They didn't have the almond milk I usually get for Emily, but I figured you'd want the regular stuff anyway." I sat at the table. Same chair. Same place I always sat. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Jason finally turned toward me, the weight of the silence beginning to settle. Look, Dad, he started, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry I didn't come back to the hospital. Things got complicated. Work blew up, Emily had practice, and I thought they were keeping you overnight anyway. I watched him speak. He was a good talker, always had been. He learned it from me. But somewhere along the line, he learned to use words not to connect, but to escape. You were there for 3 days, Dad. I should have been too. I get it. I nodded slowly. Do you? His face froze for a moment. What? I said, do you get it, Jason? Really? He shifted uncomfortably. I said I was sorry. Sorry's a word. I want to know if you understand what it feels like to wait in a hospital for someone you raised, someone you held when they were 5 and scared of thunder, only to realize they're not coming back. Not because they couldn't. But because they didn't want to. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I leaned forward. Calm. Controlled. You know what the worst part is? I wasn't even surprised. His eyes darted away. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is I taught you loyalty, and you taught me silence. He sat down across from me, slowly, like his legs had lost strength. Dad, I don't know what to say. I looked at him, really looked. He was 45 now. A grown man. A father himself. But all I saw was the boy who once cried when he lost his baseball glove, the boy who looked to me for answers, for strength, for presence. Now I saw a man who hadn't called his father in months unless guilt forced him to. You don't need to say anything, I said quietly. You already said everything the day you walked out of that hospital and never came back. He looked like he wanted to cry, but didn't know how. He reached for the mug in front of me, the chipped one, as if it could somehow fix something. You still have this? He asked. Yes, I said. Not because I'm sentimental. But because it doesn't pretend to be something it's not. That landed like a knife. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I wasn't trying to punish him. I was trying to show him what truth looked like. He stayed another half hour. Asked about my health. Offered to set up one of those meal delivery subscriptions. I told him no need. I like cooking for myself. When he stood to leave, he hesitated in the doorway. I'll try to do better, he said. I looked him in the eye. Trying isn't the same as being. He nodded. Quiet. Broken a little. And then he left. I watched his car drive away. Watched until the taillights disappeared down the hill. Then I turned back toward the house. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel weak. Because I had remembered something he hadn't. Dignity is not something others give you. It's something you choose to carry, even when no one's watching. I started waking up earlier after Jason's visit. Not because I suddenly had more energy, old age doesn't give gifts for free, but because something inside me had finally stopped waiting for permission to live. Grief can freeze a man for years, but clarity wakes him like a drill sergeant at dawn. The first morning, I stepped outside with my coffee and felt the cold Ohio air bite my cheeks. The sky was the pale, washed-out blue of early spring. My knees protested, my back cracked like old furniture, but I walked anyway. Down the driveway. Down the street. Past the mailbox that hadn't held a real letter in years. Around the block, there's a small park. Nothing special, a few rusty swings, a baseball field kids barely use anymore. But I'd walked that path 1,000 times when the kids were small. Back then, they'd race ahead of me, laughing, tripping, shouting questions about the world. Dad, why do leaves fall? Dad, how big is the ocean? Dad, were you really in a war? Now the questions had stopped. And the only thing that fell was silence. Still, that morning, I kept walking. a young couple passed me on the path. They smiled politely. That's all. Not pity, not impatience, just a simple, human smile. And I realized how long it had been since anyone saw me as someone other than an obligation. When I returned home, something urged me to keep going, not physically, but inward. I opened the old closet in the hallway and pulled out my service jacket. The faded patches. The frayed cuffs. The name Miller barely visible above the pocket. I put it on. It still fit. A strange thing happened when I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a forgotten man. I didn't see a burden. I saw someone who had survived jungles, grief, classrooms, life. Someone who had lost and loved and kept moving anyway. Later that week, I took another walk, this time near the high school where I taught history for almost 3 decades. I stood across the street, watching students rush in with backpacks slung low and shoulders even lower. I wondered if they still taught the things I once taught with fire, the human stories behind the dates, the cause behind the victories. Then I heard my name. Mr. Miller. Is that you? I turned. A man in his late 40s, hair thinning, belly softening under a plaid shirt, but his eyes were still the same. Mark Jennings. A student I taught in '92. I can't believe it, he said, breathless with genuine surprise. You look exactly the same. I laughed. You must need glasses, Mark. He chuckled, then his expression softened. You know, you changed my life, Mr. Miller. You were the reason I became a teacher. My throat tightened. He went on. I still remember your lesson on the Battle of Gettysburg. You said history isn't dates, it's people. People making impossible choices. I've told my students that every year for 15 years. He talked for 20 minutes. About his family. His job. His son who hated homework but loved baseball. He told me I mattered. More than I knew. When we finally parted, he shook my hand with both of his, holding on a little longer than necessary. Thank you, he said. After he left, I stood there alone, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I walked home lighter. Straighter. The service jacket warming my back like an old promise. That night, I sat at the oak table. The same mug. The same quiet. But something was different. The silence no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like space to rebuild who I was outside the shadow of who others had stopped seeing. I whispered into the stillness. I remember who I am now. And I swear, for the first time since Maggie died, the house seemed to breathe with me. The call came on a Sunday evening, just as the sun dipped low enough to turn the living room golden. I was sitting at the table, my journal open, writing a memory about Maggie, the way she used to hum when she cooked, when the phone buzzed. Sarah. Her name blinked on the screen like a ghost trying to return. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then it rang again. This time, I answered. Dad. Her voice trembled, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who once hid behind my legs at grocery stores. Yes, Sarah, I said calmly. I heard you were in the hospital. Jason told me. A pause. A breath. Why didn't you tell me? I let the silence stretch. Not to punish her, but to let the truth settle where excuses usually lived. I didn't think it would matter, I said. She inhaled sharply. How can you say that? Of course it matters. It hasn't mattered for a long time. That silence, the one after my words, felt like a curtain falling in a crowded theater. Dad. I'm sorry, she whispered. People apologize when they want absolution, not when they understand. I knew the difference. I taught hundreds of students how to tell the truth from the performance of truth. You're not sorry, I said gently. You're scared. She didn't deny it. I don't want to lose you. You lost me a long time ago, I said. The day you stopped calling. The day you needed me only when it was convenient. I didn't go anywhere, you walked away. She cried. quietly. Controlled. Sarah always cried like she didn't want to disturb the room. Is there anything I can do?" she asked at last. There it was. The question she should have asked years ago. I looked around at the house, the pictures, the mug, the jacket on the chair. And I realized something breathtaking in its simplicity. I didn't need anything from them anymore. They had taken pieces of me for years, time, patience, hopes, disappointments. And now, I had taken them back. Piece by piece. In silence. Through clarity. "Yes," I finally said. "You can live your life. And I will live mine." She froze. "Dad, what does that mean?" "It means," I said slowly, "I'm done chasing people who don't see me. I'm done waiting for calls or birthdays or guilt-driven visits. I'm done being disappointed." "Are you cutting us out?" Her voice cracked. "No," I said warmly. "I'm letting myself in." I heard her breath hitched, the sound of a truth hitting someone where lies used to live. "I love you," she whispered. "I know," I said. And for the first time, that word didn't feel like a request. It felt like a period. Not a comma. When the call ended, I set the phone down and exhaled. Not sadness. Not regret. Relief. A quiet, steady relief. I walked to the back porch. The evening breeze carried the smell of pine and distant chimneys. Street lights flickered on, one by one, like small acts of forgiveness I hadn't asked for. I sat in my rocking chair, the one Maggie bought me on our 30th anniversary, and felt the weight of the world shift. Not off me, but around me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt independent. My revenge wasn't anger. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. The clarity of a man who had finally remembered his own worth, without needing his children to confirm it. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cool night air, and whispered. "You can't lose what you've already let go of." And the stars, faint but steady, seemed to nod in agreement. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quietly, powerfully true. The world had not remembered me. But I remembered myself. And that was enough.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.